1 second. I just gotta find the thing. Slow internet. Sorry, guys. Okay.
And we're recording.
All right, so welcome to another session of Talks Within the Nine-Sided Circle on Sunday evenings at 6:30 p.m. on the Pacific coast of the United States. And I'm your host, Noor Kyle, and this is
Mushtaq Ali, your other host.
Yes.
Your sidekick.
My sidekick, huh?
Yeah.
So this evening we're going to be talking about time and perceptions of time. Is it a trick, perhaps? We're going to be discussing that. So, take it away.
I will, in fact, take it away. So, the first question I have for each of all of you is, how long is now? But before you answer that, I would like you to consider, if you're listening to this on the YouTube, and hopefully you are if you're not here listening to it, because otherwise that would be weird, to subscribe to this channel and to hit that little notification button to get notifications of every time we post something, which is about once a week, thereabouts, and to hit the like button. Give us a thumbs up so that we can know that you're listening and all of that kind of stuff. Or if you hated us, you can give us a thumbs down. We don't mind. So with that being said, let's think, how long is now? This is not a rhetorical question. Feel free to answer.
Scott says, now is a moment which is happening sometime after the now we are currently experiencing. That is, by the time we experience now, it is no longer actually now.
That is an absolute fact. And for tonight, I'm talking about your personal now. How long is your now? Well, I will tell you that most people's now is actually about 3 seconds. And that is the amount of time from when you start it to when you finish it. Whatever you started with is now in your past. It feels to be in your past. And we're going to do an experiment with that. If you look over to this side of your screen, I'm going to use, where am I? Over here. There, you see that triangle? You can reach out on the screen and put your finger on the top of the triangle. And I want you to count in your mind 1 second and shift your finger down to the second point, 1 second over to the third point, and 1 second back up to the first. So you're going 1001, 1002, 1003. And I want you to notice when the start of that becomes past for you. Don't worry if you don't get it the first time, because you've probably never done this before. If you're like most people, by the time you get back up to the point, your initial starting point will just be in the past. But the point that you just came from will still be in your now. There's a number of reasons why this is. And I will tell you that this is not new knowledge. There was a German researcher back in the middle 18th or middle 19th century by the name of Karl von Virats. And he developed what is called Virats Law, which is the law of how long you perceive the now. And he tested this over and over again. He did neurological tests. And this has been pretty much borne out over the century. And coolly enough, I was able to access an article on this a couple of days ago, and we are going to post a link to it in the notes. Would you do that, Kyle?
Sure, I will do that right now.
Yeah. So if you want to know more about this, you can read this article. It's a PDF. It's up online, and it will tell you some interesting things. So the now, though, according to the latest research, in some people can be extended for as long as 14 seconds.
So how might that shift between 3 seconds and 14 seconds? Is that special training or like cultural?
That's pretty much special training or accident. And interestingly, what makes it the now is your ability to pay attention. And attention seems to come in discrete packets. I'm very sorry Ilmar isn't here. The last time we talked about times, most of you will probably remember this. It was about 5 months ago. And Ilmar argued for half the thing about time. So I was hoping he would be back so we could do that again.
I was just thinking about him.
Yeah, hopefully he's doing well.
Yeah.
So now seems to be about 3 seconds long for human beings. And tonight we're just talking about the perception of time and the inner manipulation of it. The thing that got me started on this is a phenomena called Tacky, which is a kind of time distortion where either you speed up or I experience it when I can get there as everything around me slows down. And it's often, most often people talk about it in sports or in combat. And I remember there was one baseball player who was a very, very good hitter. I forget his name because I hate baseball, but he used to say that he could see the stitches on the baseball as it was coming at him because it just seemed to be coming that slowly. And so he could just step into where it would be and swing the bat and the ball would go flying.
Wow. So Aaron asks,
yes.
Is there a direct correlation between entrancement and the duration of quote unquote now?
Yes. Trances can very much alter one's sense of now, one's sense of time. Milton Erickson wrote a great book called Time Distortion in Hypnosis, which, while it's dry and academic, is the most detailed discussion of this that I know of. And so I can recommend that. I mean, I used to when I was teaching hypnosis, I would put people in trance and tell them that they were going to do this thing that would take an hour and get them started doing it inside their mind. And I would bring them out in about 60 seconds and they would feel like an hour had gone by. So an hour of internal time in 60 seconds of external time. That's different than the tachypsychia, but it's still a fascinating phenomena. And what causes this is your attention and alertness. The more attention you devote to that present moment, and the more alertness you have, in that attention, which are two slightly different things, the slower time seems to go for you. And this is a phenomena that I call slicing time. There are other names for it. Scientists have all sorts of names for this. But I chose slicing time because I'm a Terry Pratchett fan and I stole it from him, and because it's actually kind of perfect for this. According to the best science that we have right now, we do not have a continuous flow of awareness in the sense of like a beam, like a flashlight beam that's hitting everything. Our awareness is more like a movie camera that is taking lots and lots of still pictures of the environment and then comparing them with each other. And we can actually test this, not just in humans, but in a number of different species, and know how many pictures we take. Like human beings tend to take between 10 and 40 pictures of their environment at any given time, and it's mostly 10. The default number for almost all human beings, almost all the time, is 10 slices of time within 1 second, so 100 milliseconds. So every second you are taking 10 pictures, which if you know anything about film and moving pictures, you'll know that 10 frames per second is the bottom number where you perceive the film as a moving picture as opposed to a bunch of static images.
I just wanted to read that Aaron says, my strongest sensation of tachypsychia was when I was in a car accident. He felt it just prior and then during the collision.
Yep, that is not at all uncommon. One of the guys who researched this early on was I think he was a biologist, but he discovered tachypsychia while climbing a mountain in the Alps. And the way he discovered it was by falling off the mountain.
Ooh.
And as far as he could tell, he fell 60 feet and then landed on the ground, oof, and then rolled a bunch and such. And his internal experience was that 60-foot fall took forever, as opposed to 32 feet per second, which is what he was actually falling. So it was about slightly under 2 seconds worth of falling, and his perception that it was like minutes and minutes. And this got him very interested in this, and he started hunting down other people who had fallen off of mountains and lived. And found out that this kind of experience was very ubiquitous. If you are under great physical stress, your alertness goes way up. And the more alert you are, the slower you perceive time. You can say that you are slicing time way thinly rather than doing, 10 slices per second, you're doing 40. Some say 60 or 100 slices per second. Yes, Scott, it does in fact do that.
So what Scott said was, oh my gosh, sorry. So increasing one's picture taking rate from the average of 10 frames per second to 40 plus per second would induce tachypsychia, and yes.
Yes, it works, as far as we can tell, very much like the old film worked. You know, you take a film at 48 frames per second, and then you slow it down to the 24 frames per second that American movies were usually played at, and all of a sudden, everything's moving in slow motion. And we experience the same thing. It also has to do with our brain waves, interestingly enough. The more rapid our brain waves, the longer time seems to take to happen to us. So when we're in like delta sleep, you know, you fall into delta sleep, you know, for 8 hours, you know, and you're coming up into alpha and back down. But it seems like when you wake up, you don't have any sense of the passage of time. But if you go into a profound meditation that induces lots and lots of gamma waves, y'all know what gamma waves are? We'll talk brain waves in a second, but gamma waves are higher than beta waves. From gamma waves go all the way up to, you know, between 40 to almost 100 cycles per second. Tibetan
Hulk waves.
Hulk waves, yes. Well, maybe not so much because they make you powerful, but in a completely different way. Gamma brainwaves seem to have to do with the integration of experience in your mind, in your brain, and with compassion. And the people who produce the most of them while awake are Buddhist monks, Tibetan Buddhist monks who have been meditating for a long time. But when you are producing gamma waves, time seems to slow down. And yeah, I've always found that kind of interesting. So, different people can experience this a little bit more than others. There is this thing, it's called flicker fusion frequency. Say that 3 times fast. Flicker fusion frequency. Flicker fusion frequency. And this is a way that we test to see where a person's perception of movement starts. So it starts with the flickering light. And the light increases in in intensity until it appears to be constantly on. And that is the frequency where your mind basically just makes everything appear to be moving. If it's slower than that, it appears to be, you can see the discrete slices. Different creatures have different frequencies. Smaller animals with high metabolisms have faster frequencies than others. Human beings' flicker fusion frequency is usually 30 blinks per second. Very much like the 30 frames per second that we tend to use on TV. And we can oftentimes lose that frequency at a much lower rate, depending on how much attention we're paying. Now, a housefly has a flicker fusion frequency of 300, which means for it, time moves really, really slowly. And that hand that's coming down to swat it is coming as slow as a snail on ludes as far as the housefly is concerned, which is why it is so hard to whack them. A squirrel, most squirrels have a frequency of 100, which explains why it's so hard to hit them with rocks when they're in your garden. Human beings, yeah, it goes in between 10 and 30. And that's within 1 second. So within, so 31 hundredths of a second, as opposed to, or 300ths of a second, 300 milliseconds, as opposed to 100 milliseconds. So between 100 and 300 milliseconds, sorry. I have trouble with the metric system. Whoever thought of the metric system was crazy. I think it was the French. Never trust the French. All the French people watching this are going to be so within the brain adjusts everything within this parameter to make the world seem like it's this seamless whole, and like we're just smoothly moving through, as opposed to seeing the flickers. Now, some people, like especially athletes, they used martial artists, boxers, and fencers, interestingly enough, to test them, and they found that their flicker fusion frequency was quite a bit higher than average, which would make sense because you're dealing with things coming at you really, really fast all the time. So you're going to select for that. And the brain can adapt. Did you know that the brain can adapt to the point where it can see the future? That it can see the event before it happens? That sounds pretty bizarre, yes?
Yeah, let's talk about that.
Let's talk about that. So, in 2006, one Dr. David Eagleman did an experiment at, I think it was Stanford. I'm going to say it's Stanford because all the good stuff happens at Stanford. And what he did was he got a bunch of people together and he created this little game, stupid game, but you clicked your mouse button and it flashed a light. And then he took the light and he retarded it by 150 milliseconds. If it were within 100 milliseconds, nobody would notice it. So after 20 or 30 clicks, everybody's brains adjusted. So there was no perceived delay. He had them do this for a little while until they got used to that. And then he turned up the speed back to 100. And you know what happened? They would see the flicker before it touched the mouse button. Tell me how that's possible. There is no woo-woo stuff about this. This is total science. There is no magic involved here. So, that being said, there were no spells cast in the making of this test. How was it that that happened? No thoughts?
Might it have something to do with the different rates of sensory perception coming into play?
In a sense, yeah. So it's actually fairly easy. They had trained themselves to see the flash when the button was clicked. And so what happened was when they had the impulse to click the button, they would see the flash and then the button would click because they had conditioned themselves to see it.
Mm-hmm.
We don't see what is, we see what our brains present to us. Which for you, Scott, is a very interesting proposition. I see that grin going on there. Wheels turning. By the way, Kyle.
Yes.
What was the name of that show we watched with the mentalist guy?
Miracles. I can look it up real quick.
Yeah, Miracles. I was telling Scott about that show.
I can't, that's not the full name of it. I just want to double check it. Everyday Miracles.
Everyday Miracles.
Wait.
No?
Okay, Darren Brown, Miracle. I'll type it in.
Yeah. Everybody should watch this when they have a chance. It's free on Netflix, or you pay for Netflix, you get to watch it. And he's a mentalist. He does very interesting things. And some of the things that he does is with tricks of perception like the ones that we're talking about.
Got it. All right. Scott says professional baseball batters have to swing to connect with the ball before their brain can physically register what it is seeing as the ball is pitched.
Yep. Yeah, and here's a weird thing about the brain. You know, the senses don't synchronize. Hearing is faster than seeing. Taste and smell are slow. Touch, the kinesthetic senses tend to be slower than both vision and hearing. But in order to make sense of the world, you have to experience this stuff all at the same time. But if you ever wonder why a race starts with a sound rather than somebody holding up a flag, this is why. People respond much more quickly to sounds. And if you think about it, evolutionarily, that makes sense. Because you are going to hear the cave bear creeping up on you a long time before you see it. And by the time you can smell the cave bear, it's probably too late.
And if you're feeling the cave bear, it's almost definitely too late.
So, what are your thoughts so far? Do you have thoughts so far?
David, what are you thinking about?
I was thinking about the original or one of the questions Muftak wrote in the bot or like description, which was how do we use the time for the work or sense of time?
Yeah, we're getting to that. That is the $64,000 question, which is not that much money these days. Back when the $64,000 question was a thing, that was like $1 million. So, Dave, what do you think?
I like this episode. It's interesting. I've learned a few things that I did not know beforehand.
Yeah. Good.
Also, with the perception of time, it's one of the cues I look for when the class goes in a certain direction. Not the only cue, but it's one of the good ones. Particularly when everyone in the class starts to get into that, I guess you would say, slicing time differently mode.
Yeah. Funny, what do you think?
There's a few new things for me, so I look forward to listen to the rest of this.
Yeah, this is something that people have been researching for a long time, but it doesn't get any press because it's not as sexy as some of the other areas of science. It's like time, yeah, time. So, what is this good for in the work? The answer is that the work takes place when you are slicing time thinly. You actually have to be beyond the 10 frames per second to really do work. Why would that be? The neighbors are now blaring mariachi music at the top of their speakers' volumes. I don't know if you can hear that from here.
I
It's
can't
nice,
personally. Yeah.
If I start swaying back and forth, that's me listening to the music.
So Dave says it can't, perceiving it faster than 10 frames per second can create more and higher quality impressions.
Yes, this is very important. And in order to get it past 10 slices a second, you have to have your attention up and holding. You cannot just pay attention for a tenth of a second and then let it lapse. You have to build up your attention, and you have to build up your focus, and you have to build up the inner excitement to this. You want your brain to actually be stimulated. Now, there are various things that we do in order to produce this. I mean, basically, all of the practices that I have given you are designed at a certain level to begin allowing you to slice time a little bit more thinly.
So that would be like breath practices and such.
Yeah, the breath practice, the void practice, all of that kind of stuff. And I'm going to give you guys another practice tonight that, where is it? Here it is. Let me pull it out. This is how I do it. I am told that in the old days, they used some kid at the temple or at the monastery with a gong beating out the rhythm. But I don't have a kid with a gong, so I use, you hear that?
Yep.
This is a Casio. Is it Casio? I believe this is a Casio. This is a little electronic metronome. It even has a belt clip.
Nice.
Yeah. It has a tether on it too, because I use this while I'm running and riding a bicycle to train my cadence.
It's a little bit loud.
Yeah, I'm about to turn it off. Don't worry. Well, so the thing about this is I can set that up, and that gives me a 1 second count. That was 60 beats per minute. And so this is a breath practice that goes with this, and this is very, very simple. And all you do is you exhale for 3 seconds. You pause for 3 seconds. You inhale for 3 seconds. You pause for 3 seconds. The 3 seconds is very, very important, because remember, your default now is 3 seconds. So each of these actions takes place in the now. So it's exhale, pause, inhale, pause, exhale. We call this the box breath, because it goes in a square. And then, if I'm doing this with a group, come on, we'll have it beeping. And I start doing this. I can slow this down by 1 second at a time just by touching the down button. So by the time people are done with this breathing practice, rather than doing 3 seconds of now on each motion, they're doing 5 seconds of now on each motion. And over time, very, very sneakily, I train people at the retreats I used to do to experience a longer and longer sense of the now, and to associate that with their breath. So you can try this at home. Everybody get how that works?
Yeah, and it sounds like the metronome would be a very useful thing to have to support that activity.
Yeah, especially when you are doing it by yourself.
Mm-hmm. Yep.
Though it's best if you're doing it in a room where everybody's breath is synchronized.
Mm-hmm.
It gets to be a lot of fun. You get that palpable energy going on.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. And Scott says it's hard to be subtly sneaky on yourself.
It is. But it can be done.
Mm-hmm.
So anybody have questions on that? Yeah, David says that if you don't have a metronome, there is a free app called Tunable that has a metronome you can do this with. Yeah, there's a couple of different metronome apps out there that are not so bad. I'm not familiar with that one. I'm going to have to look at it.
Mm. So maybe we can include a link.
Yeah, I will throw a link up on the forum for appropriate apps for the metronome.
Mm-hmm.
Just let your phone beep at you annoyingly. Yeah, it's much better with the kid and the gong, or the bowl and the mallet going boom, 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 boom. the big hall, you know, the big meditation room with the echoes coming down off the ceiling from the dome and all of that kind of stuff. But you can't have everything you want.
That does sound like a really amazing experience, though.
Yeah.
Even just to do the practice in a room full of people, as you mentioned.
Yep.
Yeah. Something to look forward to when we finally have a retreat together.
Yep. So, let me refer to my notes and see if there's anything that I left out. Oh, the other thing, people tend to experience time as distance, which is an interesting thing. That's how we talk about it, right? Oh, I'm going to set that meeting forward, or I'm going to move that meeting back. And that seems to, how it's done seems to relate to how people write. Like if I say, draw me something on a piece of paper that shows past, present, and future. Almost everybody here is going to put the past on the left and the future on the right and the present in the center. Unless you grow up writing Hebrew or Arabic or Aramaic. And then you will put the past on the right, the future and the future on the left. If you grew up writing Chinese, you're going to put the past on the top and the future on the bottom. Which I always found interesting. I don't know what this means, but it's a very interesting thing to think about, that we equate time with distance and direction. And almost everybody puts the future in front of them and the past behind them, except for one culture, South American tribal group, if I remember correctly. They put the future behind them and the past in front of them. And the rationale behind this is we can see the past, it's already happened, so we're there looking at it. The future is sneaking up on us from behind, so we don't know what it's going to be. So, that's almost extraneous to the talk, but it's so much fun that I had to add it in. But the biggest thing I want you to take away tonight is that now has volume. And that volume, we perceive it as space, right? That's why I had you do the triangle. Because it's easy to perceive past, present, and future when you have a line you're following, when you have distance, when you have space that you're moving through. Does that make sense?
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
And a big part of the work is taking that 3 seconds and learning to make it more. Now, some people don't even have 3 seconds. They might only have 2 or 1 second before it's, you know, that you have gone past where the now is. But the bigger your now is, the more room you have to maneuver. And within that now, the more slices of time you can make, the more life you have, basically. So let's say you take an average of 10 slices of time per second. And that's enough to create your world. If you do that, the world moves along at a pretty good clip. If you only take 5 slices of time a second, the world is moving very, very fast for you. If you're taking 20 slices of a second, the world is taking a long time. You have functionally doubled the time that you have. Think about that for a second. If you feel like you don't have enough time, if you slice time more thinly, if you take more shots of the now, then you have more time. Because your brain is going to perceive it as, it's going to play it back at normal speed. And so it seems like everything is taking longer, which sucks if you're waiting for the train, but is great for thinking. And if you're doing any kind of sports, it's useful because you have more time to do what you're doing. I mean, I've been working on cultivating this within martial arts for pretty much ever since I first figured out that it existed. And my goal is, before I die, to be able to teach other people to produce this kind of time dilation at will. That's like that's on my bucket list.
I think it's a worthy goal, especially these days where, because of all of the stimuli that we feel overwhelmed by, we tend to constrict everything, and we feel like time moves so quickly that we aren't able to utilize it in the same ways that we might have been able to 50 years ago.
Yep. And part of that is by creating a particular stimuli. Looking at your phone all the time causes you to slice time thickly.
Mm.
Being lost in your phone and texting or playing Minecraft or doing any of those things, or sitting at your computer going through web page after web page, also causes you to slice time very thickly.
Why is that?
Well, for one thing, you are dealing with refresh rates, which is a thing, but and you will tend to synchronize with that. But you are tightening down your stimulus. You are not. Your awareness is very narrow.
Dave says you're getting shite impressions.
And he's right. And this is not to say that, you know, use your phone when you need to use your phone. Check your email when you need to check your email. But don't live there. Living there is bad. So that's pretty much what I had to say about time tonight.
Yeah, I think this is a really good thing to talk about now. And I think that there are many ways in which we can tie that into other things we're working on. Like I've been thinking about David and his dance and how being able to slice time thinly through while going through the motions of dance allows for more of a sensitivity to the movements the body is making and to the music that's being played.
Yep. And one of the ways you get to do that is to go into a flow state while you're dancing or while you're fencing or anything like that, because flow states are the state par excellence for slicing time thinly.
And we've touched on that in previous talks, and this is
Yes.
kind of like an expansion on that conversation.
Yeah, we're going to come back to this over and over again.
Yep.
Yeah, we're going to come back to the concept of time over and over again. Because I can't say everything I want to say about it in an hour. And then Kyle has all sorts of things to say about it that she's not even getting into because she's letting me run off at the mouth.
So, Mushtak, do you think that you can increase your now past 14 seconds?
Yes,
Okay.
I do. As a matter of fact, I think that I have secretly had you working on that this whole time.
Yeah, I had a thought about that.
Yeah, I figured since you probably just figured this out, I might as well tell you. Yes,
Yep.
that's one of the things that I have suggested to you to try are designed to increase your now past 14 seconds, because if you are in that now, you are not going to fall over.
Yep.
Cool.
By the way, that last handstand video that you put up was exceptional, I thought.
Thank you.
Yeah. If y'all
Yeah,
ain't
it feels
seen
very good.
Yeah, if y'all ain't seen it, go to Instagram and watch it, because the form was near perfect from what I could see from my vantage point. And it looked like you were just doing everything right, and it went on forever as far as handstands go.
And as she said, it felt good. So
Yeah. So that's all the things that we're looking for, especially the feeling good part. All right, final thoughts.
I'm curious to know. So I don't want to. So Fanny offered one way that she hopes to apply this. How about everyone else? What are ways that you see in your day-to-day life that may benefit from practices that help us extend our experience of this moment? What do you think, David?
My immediate thought was that I've had some trouble falling asleep lately, and I think increasing the sense of time would probably help me relax a little bit more and think less before I go to bed or something, or take a nap.
Could very well be the case. Let us know how that works.
Scott, how about you?
I've experienced Tacky psyche in brief combat as a bouncer years ago. So I've experienced it. And I think as a martial artist, that's absolutely something that I want to be able to have in my toolbox. So
Yeah.
something to work on.
Yeah, it's like the holy grail for a martial artist in a certain. It's better than the 5-finger death touch. Yeah, 5-finger exploding heart death touch. Yeah.
Oh yeah. Yup. Aaron, how about you? I know you're gonna type it in, but I'm curious to hear from you. And in the meantime, how about you, Zainab?
It would definitely help with clients when they come into the store. If I could have more time, then I would have a better impression of what they're looking for and how they're feeling about it. So that could be one area. Also, I've noticed it with while drawing, it
Yes.
gives more time to do and more accurate as well, like as what you've been perceiving, it comes to the paper.
Awesome. Yeah, definitely.
Yeah.
Those are good ones.
Interestingly, one of the places that people go into flow besides athletes is artists. You know, Michelangelo would like just paint for all day long and then go to sleep and wake up and do it again. He would just be in that flow of painting. So, yeah, it works really well for that.
Mm-hmm.
How about you, Cherie? Are you still around here?
I just want to touch on Aaron since I told her.
Yeah, I didn't see it come up.
Aaron says, I could see it being useful for reducing anxiety and increasing a feeling of concentration. Yes, I think so too. So yeah, Cherie, I don't know if you're still there.
I'm still here.
Yay.
Yay.
Yeah, I just had an unstable connection. That's why I cut the video.
Oh, that's all right.
It's okay. Even this morning, working with so much to do, I was not looking at the clock and slowing down what I was doing. So doing it softer, more gentle. It was sweeping, raking, all those things. And I noticed that when I was trying to do it hard and fast, there was, you lose energy. But when you're doing it slow and you're going through this full immersion sort of thing, you accomplish so much more. And doing it slowly with that full immersion of awareness was really enjoyable. And the next thing I know is 5 hours had passed. And I do the same thing in the massage. Sometimes, having done it for so long, I was thinking about it, 26 years really, I've been doing massage, and you never get bored if you're paying attention. And if you're really feeling with all of your senses, with that full immersion, that awareness for me makes it so enjoyable. Sometimes I look at the clock and only a few minutes has passed and I've done what I'm doing. I'm thinking, okay, so then what happens now when they've been allotted an hour or something like that? But it's that full immersion and doing things thoroughly and going over it again and noticing another quality again. So for me, working with people, there's another layer and another sense and another experience to be had as the awakening, that awareness becomes fulsome.
Cool. Yeah. I mean, I think there's something to be said about like that, as Zainab was talking about in conversation with potential buyers coming in, and with you doing massage, like there's that being in the moment in that interaction that kind of brings out the details and the nuances and the vivacity of it.
The experience of doing stretch therapy too, and Dave would probably attest to this, and Plani, is that when you're doing your stretching and you're bringing the students and the people around you to an awareness of, now inhale here, notice this, notice this, notice this. What if you actually led it with your navel versus your face? Lead it with the left shoulder, lead it with your heel, lead it with, and the people then feel that they've even noticed that before. And they've said that to me afterwards. It was just like a totally different way of experiencing their full self in that moment. But it's so brief that we're continually practicing the same thing over and over and over again. And I feel the work is like that. you practice, you practice, you practice, and then all of a sudden you get a little glimmer. Oh, is that what that's about? Because initially, sometimes I don't know what they're talking about.
Yeah. Thank you for sharing, Sheree.
So that's it.
Dave, how about you?
I have something, but it will open up a lot of other lines, and I have to run off and get my daughter in about 1 minute. So I'll keep it for later.
All right, cool. If you want to share it on the forum, if you're open to that, that might be cool. And if so, we look forward to reading about it. All right, go for it. Any other thoughts or questions or whatever before we wrap it up? I guess we'll be doing commercials in a sec too.
Yes, we are going to be doing commercials.
Yes. Bye, Dave.
Bye, Dave.
All right.
All right, then it's commercial time. Hold on to your hats, because I'm going to spin you a tale of why something or other or something or other. First thing, we are approaching the time when we are going to be starting this new Enneagram thing. Some people have contacted me in writing saying, yes, I want to do this, with their email addresses. Even if you think that I have your email address, this is checking to make sure that you can follow the instructions. So, don't worry, Scott. I cut you some slack just because. But yeah, so make sure that I have your name on the list, because I would be sad to miss any and all of you who want to be there. So there's that. It's a new month, and not only is it a new month, but it is the month of December. And you know what that means?
New Alms Drive. Yes?
New Alms Drive, yes. And this one is important because December is usually, for people like who do work like us, December is the worst month of the year.
Mm-hmm.
Because we usually rely on people's disposable income, and in December, nobody has disposable income.
Yeah.
So we are going to be desperate and tightening our belts this year, but if you have the wherewithal to drop a little cash in the begging bowl as it comes by, it would be greatly appreciated. And we don't know what the prize is going to be this month yet, but I will be announcing that shortly, as well as the theme of the Sacred Talk. This month's Sacred Talk last month's Sacred Talk will be
Secret
available.
Talk. Yeah.
Secret Talk. Well, Secret and Sacred will be up within the week.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Yeah.
I'm doing a little bit of traveling myself, so.
Yeah. And I will tell you that the topic for next week, and I've decided that we should maybe start announcing the topic for the week, but the next week, so that people can get all excited about it, or decide it sounds like stupid shit and you don't want to be here. Either one. But the topic for next week is going to be sacred clowns and tricksters, and where they fit in the Sufi way.
That'll be fun then.
It will be fun. And, you know, if you end up with a coyote sitting on your front porch, you know that you should be here. So that's what I got.
Cool. So I guess that's the big stuff right now. And other than that, yeah, I'm growing my blog right now. I have noticed it's picked up a bit, which is really exciting and definitely motivating. So if you want to check out Light Goes Rogue, feel free. It's on Facebook, it's on Instagram, it is on WordPress. Yeah, so that's what I got. And I will be doing more stuff on that as we go forward.
Yeah, and it's always good, except when it's great. All right, I am going to put an end to the recording now. So wave goodbye, everybody.
Bye, guys. Good
And
to see you
we
all.
will
Thanks.
see you all next week.